Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Sunday Vibes. Unfortunately, we're not in the pub. A lot of people are off. Joe's just come back from skiing. He's basically done his ACL. He's not here today. Chris is out in South Africa. So I am joined today by none other than Patrick Van Straten and Michael McCubbin. Pat, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. Just before this, I dropped an iPad onto my big toe. Ooh. So I was trying to express my pain without waking up the baby. But I'm recovering now. I'm in recovery, so that's good.
Good to hear. Good to hear. McCubbs, how are you, mate?
Well, that's a great working from home injury. That one. Classic.
Didn't someone not make it to the World Cup because they dropped like an aftershave bottle on their foot?
Wouldn't be surprised. I feel like Rio Ferdinand did something like that in his career.
Yeah.
Like, definitely, like watching TV, like with the remote or something stupid.
No, he was PlayStation. He played too much PlayStation.
Was it PlayStation?
And then, done his hand in or something like that.
Oh, silly. But I'm not too bad, Zach. Not too bad. Had my first day out of COVID isolation yesterday, so I went for a nice long 2-hour walk. So that was nice. Missed a lot of the Europa League as a result, actually, but it was actually worth it, I thought. So yeah, all good, thanks. How about you?
Good to hear. Yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Been really, really busy with the video that went out live yesterday, The Chase. If you've not watched it, make sure you check it out after this Sunday Vibes episode. And what a Sunday Vibes episode we have for you. Because if you have been living under a rock, you may have missed out on the information from the BBC and several other reliable journalists that Erik ten Hag looks like he is set to be appointed as the Manchester United manager ahead of Maurizio Pochettino. Now, apparently discussions have already taken place over the budget that he's going to be given and his backroom staff. So today, we're going to basically kick off Ten Hag's future with United with what 2 transfers he needs to be doing this summer to get United back at least into Champions League football next season. Probably being a title favourite is a little bit too far just yet. So we both, all 3 of us, have picked 2 players for whatever positions we think are most necessary, and are going to discuss which ones they should be doing and also what we don't like about each other's moves. Now, firstly, Erik ten Hag becoming Manchester United manager. Obviously, McCubbin, you are a United fan. What do you think of it?
Yeah, I feel relatively positive about it. I was just saying off camera, actually, like I do get this sense from United fans in general that the club is about to, whether it is Ten Hag or Pochettino, you'd expect it to be one of those two. It looks very much like it's going to be Ten Hag at the moment. We filmed this on a Friday. The situation could have even changed by this point. You never know, the way things go. But, either way, United are very likely to appoint the most forward-thinking manager since the days of Fergie. And yet I feel like there's almost less excitement around the club now than ever before. I think it's just the kind of worry that, this really is a poison chalice. And I think that kind of transition between Solskjaer and Rangnick, and the fact that Rangnick, the side wasn't able to capitalise on some quite good form, and now the players, a number of players, the dressing room just is in a pretty unideal state. I think there's just a general sense around the club that it's going to take a miracle to be able to get this kind of dressing room back on track. But things change quickly, and we could be having very different conversations by the start of next season. But I just think, the stuff around Rangnick and the fact that it now looks like he's not going to have as much power as maybe a lot of fans would have hoped, is a little bit of a worry, especially if we're bringing in a manager who's never managed in a top 5 league before and has never managed in a club where there is so much pressure on the manager and so much responsibility on the manager in terms of the structure. Obviously our kind of football director kind of structure is very, very young and doesn't look very well defined as yet. So that stuff is a bit of a worry. I'm feeling positive that it looks like something's going to get done. And my other worry is that over the last month there's been a lot of sentiment among United fans that Erik ten Hag is the man to go for and not Pochettino. And although I do have faith that there's more to it than this, there is a part of me that's has the hierarchy caved into pressure from the fans, because it's been so clear that a a majority of the fan base do not want Poch, despite him having always been the top target for United until like the last few weeks, basically. That also is a little bit worrying to me, if that is the case. I hope it's not, but that is a little bit of a fear in the back of my mind.
Well, I mean, you mentioned that Gary Neville put out a tweet and with him basically expressing that he thinks Poch should be the manager, and then with a poll saying what would the United fans pick. And I think Ten Hag had like 83% of the vote, and obviously he has a huge United following.
Yeah, I mean, we've done polls. I think Joe did a poll as well. I think I did a poll on the community feed. It's always been at least 70% Ten Hag, at least in the last like month or so. And it's a weird one because it's just like, it just shows just how fickle the kind of football world is, isn't it? That loss against Real Madrid in the Champions League has may have killed Poch's chances. That's very, very possible. So yeah, it's a weird one. But Eric Ten Hag, I sound a bit spoiled now. Eric Ten Hag is one of the best managers in Europe. Like if United do hire him, then that there's a lot of reason to be hopeful. So yeah.
Indeed. I mean, Pat, from a neutral point of view, Poch, Ten Hag, like either one they get wasn't necessarily going to be a bad move, was it?
No, I mean, they are slightly different kinds of managers, but I think I can understand feeling like maybe there's more room in Ten Hag's kind of ceiling to be had, if that makes sense. Like, you look at Pochettino and you think Pochettino is really going to improve that side and get them moving in the right direction. But his Spurs side topped out at second in the league. And I kind of think, okay, United do have a lot of money, but are they going to get a better striker than Kane was at his peak? Are they going to have a better goal-scoring midfielder than Dele? Bruno is amazing, but Christian Eriksen was absolutely incredible. Okay, if Sancho ends up being as good as Son, then that's a pretty great career. Like, I suppose there are questions there about what is it that Pochettino does that is going to bridge the gap to Liverpool under Klopp and City under Pep, because those two sides, the problem is those two sides are so good that we're not just talking about creating an amazing side here. You could be an amazing side and finish third in this league. So I kind of understand why United fans are inclined to dream on Ten Hag. My concerns are very similar to McCubbin's, like whether he's going to be put in a position to succeed. That's really the question. But I'm glad that it looks like he's going to come in and have a whole summer to work with this squad. My sense of him is that he's not going to be worried about some of the things that previous managers might be worried about, like kind of, how do I present? Is this player, my perfect player? Can I present this to the fans or to the press? He's going to think, how can I get the best out of some of these players that I've got? And so I think that if I were a player like Wan-Bissaka who'd fallen out of favour, then I'd think, you know what, I'm going to get a fair shake under this guy. I think it's a really exciting appointment. I'm interested to see it. It'll be the first time United have got a clear, enjoyable identity since Ferguson left. And so from that point of view, I'm really intrigued. And the thing that would give me a little bit of reassurance, if I were a United fan, is the fact that Ten Hag has previously been wary of taking roles at Barcelona or at Bayern Munich when they've come up, because they weren't set up to succeed. Now, the rumours here are that he's kind of talked to, it's the classic, he has told friends that, but the rumour is that he said, this is going to be a 5-year project. And I think that the United board have needed to hear that for some time. They need somebody who says, we're not going to win the title next year. We may not win the title for the next 3 years. The point here is rebuilding the club and getting in a position to challenge for titles consistently for a decade. And so if he's willing to say that, if they've heard that and taken it seriously, then that is such a good start, because United have the materials to compete with any side in the world. What they need to do is just pick what they're going to be and commit to it fully and understand that results aren't going to be immediate. And if they've done that with Ten Hag, then I think that's a really good pathway to success, regardless of our reservations.
Yeah, indeed. And it does look fantastic. I think one of the things that he said about getting the job is the only reason he'll take it is if the United board do back him and do kind of say, look, I don't want, may it be Cristiano Ronaldo, I don't want this player to get rid of him. He's not going to be part of my squad. And United will back that supposedly. And it is very interesting. Obviously, he's been able to rebuild Ajax a couple of times. He lost key players in Frenkie de Jong, Matthias de Ligt, Hakim Ziyech, and look at where Ajax are now. They're still obviously competing for the Eredivisie this season. They've won 2 Eredivisie under him, along with 2 domestic cups. had a pretty decent run, at least in the group stages for the Champions League. And so it is definitely going to be interesting, and he can rebuild. So one of the things that obviously we are going to be talking about today is that rebuild, that package of players. Now, guys, we can't be mixing and matching. You can't pick one of your players and I'll pick one of McCubbin's players. Our deals basically come as a pair. So, firstly, tell me which positions you want to kind of go out and buy in the summer and which players you're looking for. Michael, mate, I'll let you go first.
Well, yeah, it's a difficult one actually, because I think there's potentially 4 positions that need to be addressed. You know, striker, the right wing, defensive midfield, and potentially right back. But I think we can probably put right back to the back burner for now, just because there are still 2 options there. You know, Dalot has looked good at points this season. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, at least defensively, was pretty sound until this season. So I think we could, I think personally, I can kind of, leave that. And then, I guess striker, I think I personally do think we need to be going for a striker. I don't know whether this, it kind of depends on the Ronaldo situation. Depends on whether Martial's brought back in, because obviously I don't know whether Sevilla are going to make his move permanent in the summer. So I think if we were going to go for a striker, I'd want to go for Darwin Nunez.
Compete with Arsenal for him.
So yeah, absolutely. I think you go balls to the walls with that one. I think he's probably, out of all the young strikers in Europe right now, I think he's probably my favourite. I think he's the most outstanding. I think he's the one who clearly looks like he will be a world-class player in the next few years. Compared to the likes of, like Isak and David, who do look great, but I think there are still question marks over them. Especially Isak's scoring record this season has not been good enough, has it? I'm trying to think. There's another one out there who I forget, who I've forgotten off the top of my head. But obviously Vlahovic is out of bounds now after his move. But I think I'd want to go for him. But then if we were going to prioritise the right wing, and I think this has been a big problem for United, right? Because Jadon Sancho was brought in to fix the right-hand side problem. He didn't, or at least he wasn't trusted to. Let's face it, he just wasn't trusted to by Solskjaer and Rangnick. And so United have the same problem that they've had for the last few years, despite spending £75 million on someone who was supposed to fix that. So my suggestion for the right would be Anthony from Ajax. Obviously, has worked with Ten Hag before. He's been tipped along with Yuri and Timber as a potential player to follow him. Also been linked with Bayern Munich, valued around the 60-70 million mark. Ajax paid around 22 million for him initially, which is obviously quite a lot of money for Ajax. So it would make sense for him to be valued that highly. I think probably it would still be a bit of an overspend on a player who, we haven't seen, that much yet. Like, we haven't seen a solid 3 years from him yet. And given the mixed record of Eredivisie to Premier League success, I would have my reservations about paying that much for him. Perhaps the fact that Ten Hag is going to United, maybe that will strengthen United's hand in that sense, in terms of the player wanting to follow him. But nevertheless, he has been superb this season, hasn't he? 29 goals and assists in 38 kind of full 90 minutes across this season. 7 goal involvements in 7 Champions League games this season. Is a specialist on the right, which means that obviously Sancho can fully bed in on the left. Also means that a player like Marcus Rashford can cover at centre forward more consistently. His numbers are excellent. 4 shots a game. In the Eredivisie, that's the same in the Champions League this season. He's creating 2 chances a game, completes over 2 dribbles. In a side, these numbers would obviously come down in the Premier League. At Ajax, he's got so many players around him who can relieve pressure, etc. But in terms of specialist right-sided attackers in Europe, at his age. There really aren't many better, and especially players who are gettable as well, who aren't going to be tied to their clubs. I think he would be a really ideal player for United. Naturally, weirdly, we do actually need young players. It was only a couple of years ago that we had one of the youngest squads in the league, but that has very quickly changed in the last couple of years for a number of reasons. And so it's really important that when a new manager is coming in, that we have players who can grow with that manager. And obviously Anthony's already grown with Ten Hag at Ajax. There's a proven kind of trajectory there in terms of the relationship between the coaching and the player. I think it would make sense on a number of levels in that sense.
I mean, he's going to cost a pretty penny, I think. But that is something I think, obviously, United we've known for years have always had that ability to do.
I think this is the problem, right? Because we have to either prioritise a right winger or a centre forward. I don't think you can do both in the same transfer window. Like, he will get backed this summer. Like, I expect him to be given 150 million. That's usually at least what new managers are given at Old Trafford. Yeah. I think a striker and a right winger will be too much if we want to also sign a midfielder.
So your package deal is Nuno and Anthony. Is that what you're putting forward?
I was just putting Nunez out there for argument's sake. I think I could go for either one of them. Okay. I think for the purpose of this video, I've stepped in for Joe last minute here, so I've not had a huge amount of time to think about this, but I would go for either one of them. For argument's sake, because I don't want to be greedy and suddenly put forward 3 players, because I do think a midfielder is so essential.
Okay. Well, we're talking about midfielders then. I guess we'll come back to your choice in a second, Mikey. Pat, who are you coming with your 2? I assume a midfielder is probably one of them.
I considered picking 2 midfielders here.
Wow.
I mean, as much as United fans talk about needing another forward, and I do think they need a centre forward more urgently than the winger, I just look at their front line and I think there's enough here that a competent manager should be able to get a good attack out of it. With Martial coming back, with Rashford, with Bruno, with Sancho, and obviously with Ronaldo and Cavani, there is enough there that you should be able to get a decent number of goals out of them, even if it's not ideal. Whereas I look at the midfield and I think the best manager in the world couldn't make this midfield really good. It's just not. It's just horrible. McTominay, I've never rated him. I still don't. He's got good energy, but his positional sense is diabolical. I think that's been really obvious under Rangnick, in fact. Fred, I think, definitely has abilities. And if you make him just your sitting, not sitting, I suppose, because he goes and hunts for the ball. But if you make him the guy who really mops up across the back line, then that's fine, so long as you've got a box-to-box player who also defends quite a bit as well and does lots of ball progression. But that engine room zone just really, really troubles me. So in the end, I have gone for one midfielder just for the sake of variety. So I've gone for Ismail Benacer because I think that there are going to be a couple of Premier League candidates who are going to come up here. One of the nice things about finding players for United is you can just shop at the top end of the market. You can find a guy who does everything. And Benacer is one of those people who I think has been historically kind of devalued, maybe because he's kind of quite small. I thought this would change after Conte, but it never did. And I still think there's this distrust in the Premier League of central midfielders who are not big. But Benacer plays like a bigger guy. He's 5'9". He's not short, but he looks lightweight. However, great lower body strength. He's almost never knocked off the ball. The guy is an unbelievable dribbler, actually. And I do think that United are going to need, in this new system, somebody who can defend a lot, somebody who's a really good passer, and somebody who can resist the press. Because if they want to be a top-level side, then they need to get a player who isn't just good enough to beat most of the Premier League, but somebody, like McCubbin says, who can grow with the side and be a reliable performer for them in the Champions League later on. And I think Benacer is a good candidate there. I mean, this season, he's completing 2.2 dribbles a game. He's got a 92% success rate.
Nice.
And I know the players that you guys are going to bring in midfield, they are not going to rival that. They just aren't. His passing as well, he's 12th in Europe for progressive passes per 90. 7.4 a game. So he's actually a progressive pass is a ball that either moves possession into the penalty area or moves possession at least 15 yards upfield. And he does that more than Modric, which is crazy. I mean, he's some way ahead of Pogba here, and Pogba rates really highly by this metric. Defensive output, greater than anyone at Old Trafford, 5.7 defensive actions per 90, 24 pressures. So he's pressing as much as Fred. He's winning the ball more. He's also better on the ball. He can drive upfield when he sees space. He can pass as well. This is a guy who can do everything. And where sometimes you'd worry about a player getting transplanted from a different league because you think, how's the language going to work? How's he going to slot in? He came through Arsenal's academy, or he was in Arsenal's academy for a spell. He can already speak English. And also, I think some of the players linked to United, and we're going to come on to a few of them, are not actually playing in possession sides. They might do at international level, but players like Declan Rice, Ruben Neves, they are not playing in possession sides. Both their teams have under 50% possession this season. Milan are not like that. Milan are a side that have most of the ball, that play kind of downhill. And when you look at Ten Hag, what do his side do? They take a ton of shots and they have a ton of possession. They're at 63% possession this season. They are a side who is really allergic to losing the ball. And I think that Benacer fits that. He's 24 as well, so he's kind of ready to go. Contract up in 2 years. I know Milan are trying to renegotiate it at the moment, but apparently he earns 1.6 million euros a year.
Wow.
United can definitely offer an
all
improvement on
wages
that.
there, aren't they?
And I think if United came in, he would have serious thought about whether he wanted to sign a new contract at Milan, because United could say, you're going to start in our engine room under one of the most exciting managers in the world. We're going to pay you an absolute fortune. And there is no stage like Old Trafford. Whatever has changed about Man United's status over the last few years, being a starting midfielder for Manchester United is something that players have grown up dreaming of. And I think that he's just got everything that I'd want to see. So, yeah, I would definitely get him in because you can play him as a DM. You can play him as more of a box-to-box midfielder. He just solves a bunch of problems. And I also think he'd probably while he'd cost quite a bit, he'd cost less than Rice. I don't know if he'd cost as much as Calvin Phillips, maybe about the same. So this isn't like an exorbitant amount of money we're talking about either.
Yeah, it's a really, really strong choice. I think originally I would have said, if it wasn't Ten Hag that's in charge now, that a deal like this, almost like it's too smart of a deal that United would do. However, now they're bringing in Ten Hag and they're apparently giving him kind of control of whatever, even though that's not necessarily how it worked at Ajax. It was actually obviously the board that really helped out with transfers there. He didn't really want to be a huge part of it. But with someone like Ten Hag, like getting a smarter guy like Benacer is actually a possibility. I think there's also definitely a shout about what's going to happen with Donny van der Beek. Obviously excelled under Ten Hag at Ajax, but he is now currently playing for a relegation-bound Everton, and barely gets into the squad at times. So that's going to be a very, very interesting possibility with his future at Manchester United. He must have been buzzing to see Ten Hag looking like he's going to be getting the job. Okay, then I'll move on to one of my players. He was name dropped throughout that, Declan Rice. I don't want to go on too much because we do speak about Declan Rice and his links to Manchester United all of the time. But the guy's got it all. Like, when we talk about what kind of McTominay's half decent at, and what Fred has been really good with recently, this is kind of Declan Rice in a nutshell. His defensive numbers are ridiculous. Yes, he doesn't play in a possession-based side, but you did mention, obviously, he has done that for England. Like, we can see Declan Rice's range of passing, and especially against Italy in the final of the Euros, like, has improved massively. And obviously his ability to take the ball from defence into midfield, like his progressiveness is one of the best in the league. Only a few City players are above him, which shows you how crazy Declan Rice is at taking that ball and connecting it from the defence to the attack. Like, this guy is someone that's come on so far this season. Every year for the past 3 years, Declan Rice has continued to improve and improve and improve, and he's only 23. Like he's homegrown, obviously, as well, which helps with that quota. But he's only going to be getting better and better, and he's improved. And I don't mean this in a harsh way, but he's improved under a manager like David Moyes, who is definitely a good standard. But the idea of then having Declan Rice working with someone like Eric Ten Hag, to really like enhance what he is good at, it is frightening in my eyes. Like he's going to make him he's going to be even better player. I think the big stumbling block for someone like Rice now is how much it costs. Like we know that one of the things that Declan Rice wants to be doing is playing Champions League football. And maybe that's a possibility with West Ham if they go further in the Europa League and go on to win the competition. They're currently 1-1 at the moment on aggregate with Lyon, and I can see them going to France and beating them and making it to the semi-finals of the competition. And if they get to Champions League football, I don't think Declan Rice leaves West Ham this summer. I think that was one of his biggest things, is he wants to make sure he's playing in the top European competition. But if they don't, and obviously with the way things are looking like for Manchester United, they also don't make it to Champions League football this season, it's going to cost a pretty penny, and it's going to be £100 million. And I don't quite know whether United would be willing to spend that, along with also the wages that Declan Rice is going to be asking for as well next summer. But we're not looking at that side. It's just my dream side of how things are going to, or of who United should be targeting. But yeah, I just think for someone like Declan Rice, there's also levels of like the future for him. He's a ready-made captain. He's already captaining the West Ham side. And things like that they can bring to the United midfield and squad are very, very important. Not to mention the guys that he kind of already knows in that squad, having played obviously with Maguire, Sancho and Rashford all at international level as well. So in terms of Declan Rice, like for me, he's the number one guy you're going to go for. I just don't know whether they're going to be able to get him, because Chelsea may also be after him as well, and if they get Champions League football, the proposition there might be a bit easier to go and stay in London as well. Mikey, then who is your midfield option?
Yeah, I think with Rice, to be honest, I don't think it matters what happens. He's staying at West Ham for next season. In my opinion, like he'll have the club captaincy next year. His value's only going to get, or at least his chances of leaving and getting a good deal wherever he goes next will only be better next year. Like his contract's just too long, I think, for anyone to seriously come in for him, especially at the price that West Ham are asking for. Like he is amazing, but I just don't. 100 million is the absolute most I think anyone will pay for him. Anything more than that, I just don't think anyone goes near. So yeah, I've gone for maybe a slightly more conservative option in the midfield with Calvin Phillips. He just is, a Premier League proven defensive powerhouse, isn't he? Unlike someone like Rice, he's a lot more of a sitting midfielder. I think United do have kind of box-to-box talent there, and it will be really interesting to see what Ten Hag does, because obviously Donny van de Beek was one of his favourite players at Ajax, but then Fred has probably been United's best player under Rangnick, aside from perhaps Sancho, and has really excelled in a more free position, in a more box-to-box position, and so I think it just illustrates that United really do need someone who will sit. And I think defensive midfielders, we're kind of always in danger of kind of boxing them into like doing one job only. Like defensive midfielders these days, or for quite a long time, have had a lot of skills to offer in terms of ball progression, in terms of being able to being able to carry the ball as well. But I do think Phillips is a little bit more of a useful cog in that sense, in that he can let the rest of the midfield kind of do the kind of pretty stuff. And we saw his partnership with Rice at the Euros last summer was great. He's been integral to Leeds, him and Bamford, missing games at the start of the season, really got their campaign off to the worst possible start, didn't it? And he obviously has great experience now as well, 26 years old. Obviously this season has been affected by injury, which is a little bit of a worry. But equally, like Benacer, I think Pat, you made a really good point, really good points about him. But my one worry with him would be the fact that he's not even been like a regular starter at Milan this season. Now, he has been in the second half of the year, but before that was very much being kept out by Kessie and Tonali, and that would be my one worry, is that if Pioli hasn't trusted him, 100% over the last 18 months, maybe there's reasons for that, despite his numbers being excellent. And like Benacer, Phillips' defensive output is brilliant. 5.4 defensive actions in a team that still does continue to dominate possession. 5.2 passes into the final third. Last season, 4.7 this season. Still, very, very solid, especially considering that Leeds' attacking output in general has not been quite there this term. The only stumbling block, I think, is the price tag. £60 million is being banded around at the moment. I think, again, that's just too much. But yeah, and also getting a player out of Leeds to sign for Man United is never an easy task as well. So again, a bit like you, Zach, it's hard to envisage it actually happening, but I think that is the kind of profile of player that United needs to be looking at.
Well, I think as well for the United and Leeds kind of... they have been working together recently. Obviously, you sold them Dan James as well in the summer gone. There are talks happening there, and also it's not, say, of the previous years where Leeds and United were battling it out for the top in Champions League football. Leeds are some way off where Manchester United are now. He's
still a key player though. Calvin Phillips has to make that decision that he's going to be absolutely hated, hated.
Yeah, and he's a local lad as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I remember I watched the documentary, his nan's a huge Leeds supporter, and that would be some very awkward Christmases, I think, if he did move to Manchester. But I do like the shout. So our kind of midfield at the moment is a Benacer, Calvin Phillips, or Declan Rice. Obviously there is Ruben Neves as well, who has been linked with Manchester United already. Apparently Ten Hag has been a fan of Neves since his kind of Porto days. I think we sometimes forget still how young Neves is. He was playing for Porto in the Champions League when he was a teenager, and he's still now only 25 years old. And so he is also a huge possibility, and maybe actually out of the kind of three we've mentioned is probably more the most realistic option. Okay, then we've heard then Mikey's other shout for Anthony. Pat, who is your other shout, and what position are they playing in, my friend?
Can I just say, Zach, why are you saying Anthony? Where are you from? Why are you
Anthony?
The name is Anthony, and even if you were an American,
it doesn't have an H in it, does it?
Yeah, it doesn't have an H in it. This is a weird thing. Why are people in England now are saying Anthony? I've noticed this lately, and it just it makes me very angry.
I do apologise, Anthony.
This is my soccer. This is the hill I'll die on.
Anyway, the other position. Tell me who it is. Who have you gone for?
Well, I mean, just to go back to what we were saying before, I think one of the issues is the price on all these players. I mean, obviously it always is, but even for United, because Declan Rice is amazing and he's worth that to West Ham, but he's not actually worth £100 million. I don't know if any central midfielder has ever been worth £100 million, really. Who is the best midfielder in the world right now, and are they worth that amount of money? I don't really know. Because you expect a player for that amount to really, really make the difference. And Declan Rice is going to make a difference in a lot of ways, but also a lot of what he does is already done by other people. So if you want somebody who can just defend, then Fred does that. So you don't want to just park Rice in a purely defensive role. But also in Bruno Fernandes and currently Pogba, they've got two of the best ball progressors in the league. So it's one of those things where you still want to ask, even when you've got a lot of money, is this the best way we could spend this money? And there's a part of me that thinks buying two really good midfielders for 50 mil each might actually be a better use of 100 mil than buying Rice, no matter how much I like the player. So yeah, anyway. I have gone for a striker here, and I agree with both your guys' reservations about the striker market right now. It's pretty weak. So I've gone for Dominic Calvert-Lewin, just because I think he might be available for a little bit less than he normally would be, because Everton might go down. It currently looks like the biggest rival United would have for him is Arsenal. I think that unless Arsenal finish fourth, which is still possible, United probably have a stronger hand there. But to be honest with you, Calvert-Lewin, I think, is just the sort of player who pretty much any team could use. A couple of years ago, I really thought Man City should have bought Calvert-Lewin, and I still kind of stand by that unless they get Haaland. But he's just such an enormous weapon in the air, and I really think that's undervalued in terms of how much less predictable it makes your side's attack. If you have a guy who's this much of a presence in the box, you immediately have a different way of attacking teams. And Calvert-Lewin, is he a great link-up player? Not particularly, but he's fine on the ball. Is he a great presser? Well, I actually think, yeah, he is a good defender. His pressing numbers aren't absolutely elite, but he's a problem for teams he plays against. Is he a great dribbler? No. But he's mobile. So, I don't know. I look at a lot of these things and I think, oh, he's not amazing, but he's good enough. But fundamentally, United should have enough creativity outside the box to have a guy in the box who's purely a goal threat. They should have enough, I think, between Bruno and Sancho. That should be enough creativity with a better passing midfielder to have a striker whose job is much more to get on the end of chances. And Calvert-Lewin, he is versatile enough that I think he can plug in a bunch of different ways. I think that Ten Hag will be able to get what he needs out of him. 25 years old, homegrown. There's obviously a question mark over his fitness, but if you put him in the side, he's immediately going to help out when you lose the ball much more than Ronaldo is. He's immediately going to provide as much threat in the air as anybody in the league. He's immediately going to chase down long balls as well as pretty much any striker in the league. And I think that set pieces suddenly become a huge danger as well. If you've got Calvert-Lewin, Varane and Maguire, that's a serious complement of aerial threats there. So
they've been really poor with set pieces this season.
Yeah, and so there's clearly room for improvement. I don't know. I understand that my argument here is not like absolutely unequivocal. I'm not saying he's amazing at this and he's amazing at that and he's amazing at that. I think it's important to recognize that in a lot of these regards, his numbers are good enough rather than amazing. But there's so much here to like, and in the absence of a really standout striker prospect on the market, I think that this one just makes a lot of sense to me. I think that sometimes with United, we get drawn into this idea that they need the perfect player, the guy who can do absolutely everything. I think there may be a little bit of that going on with Rice at the moment. And actually, when you look at teams like Man City and especially Liverpool, they don't go out and get guys who can do absolutely everything. They get guys who fit a really specific role. And I think in this case, Calvert-Lewin could fit a couple of specific roles. And that would be good enough to make United a serious power. So I don't know. I think Calvert-Lewin here makes a lot of sense, especially if it leaves you a little bit more money to do some surgery on the midfield, maybe bring in a right back.
I do like that. I do like that a lot, especially as well. It'll be interesting to see Calvert-Lewin in a better team, where he's obviously getting more chances and more creative, and he's playing with someone like Bruno behind him compared to an Everton side that lost their best creative player in Lucas Digne, and are very much struggling constantly. Okay, then I'll move on to my final one. It's also a striker. Like, we know United, especially with what the rumours are that Erik ten Hag may basically say to Ronaldo, like, I don't want you. They're going to need another guy up top, as we've already covered. So I've also quite realised I've gone very, very expensive in my two shouts. Victor Ostermann at Napoli. And again, it kind of has the same criteria as the Declan Rice one, in the fact that with Napoli, he's probably, unless something goes really, really wrong, probably going to get Champions League football next season. United aren't going to be able to offer that. But what United can offer is huge, huge wages and a lot of money. And sometimes for footballers, that is a big decision. And possibly the future of Manchester United being a very, very good squad and even a title challenging squad in 3 years' time under Erik ten Hag. And that is for someone like Victor Ostermann, who's still only 23. In 3 years' time, he's going to be 26, just approaching his prime years, can be a very, very attractive proposition. And as we kind of already stated, the idea of playing at Old Trafford, the Champions League nights, the kind of the history that club has, and for someone like Ostermann maybe growing up would have known the huge name that United is, that can be a very attractive prospect. Like, we kind of mentioned, the striker scenario in this summer is not fun. It's not easy. If you're looking for a striker, it's not a great market to be going out there for, especially when your Erling Haaland isn't going to be going to someone like United. He's going to be going to one of the top clubs. Kylian Mbappe is basically only going to be at PSG or Real Madrid this summer. So I feel like Victor Ostermann's probably your next best choice, realistically. He's ridiculous up top. He's very, very quick. He's good in the air. He's strong. He's kind of your better, much better version of a Dominic Calvert-Lewin with the way things are working at the moment, and kind of has extra things too. He's got over 0.6 XG per 90, which for the third year running shows you this isn't just a fluke. He's played in 2 different leagues now, Serie A and Ligue 1, and been great in both of them. So he continues to show how good of a striker he is. He's taking over 4 shots per game, which is in the top 5% of strikers. He's fantastic. Only issue is his injury record is a little bit patchy. He's been injured quite a lot. He's only had 33 full 90s in the last 2 years, which can be a worry. And what United don't want to do is go and spend so much money on a striker who is only going to feature for them half the season. That can be quite poor. Especially with the form of someone like Rashford, who you would think maybe be the replacement up top if it's needed, who's currently not playing to the level that we've seen him be recently. But it may be worth the risk because his strike rate is quite frankly ridiculous. He's scored or assisted every 126 minutes for Napoli. So when he is playing, he is fantastic. And I kind of feel like he'd fit that United system if Erik ten Hag goes forward with a 4-3-3. He could possibly go with a 3 at the back as well. But still, he fits that system fantastically with if you do have a Jadon Sancho on your left wing and whatever right winger it may be, if it is Antony, whatever it might be. I think he'd fit that perfectly as well. So that's my suggestion of Victor Ostermann. Again, very, very expensive. Will he move for no Champions League football? You're going to have to pay him a lot of money. Like, this is another move that could be 100 million euros. And as kind of Pat mentioned, maybe compared to Declan Rice, this is the better move for 100 million euros because he is going to have more impact in the game in terms of goals and assists. So yes, our 2 options there for everyone. Mine was Declan Rice and Victor Ostermann. Kind of unrealistic, if I'm being honest. Mikey, you said Antony and Calvin Phillips.
Calvin Phillips, yeah. Or if we are going to go for a centre forward, Nunez.
Okay, I like that. And then Pat, you've gone for Bennacer and it escapes me,
Calvert-Lewin.
Not Declan Rice, Calvert-Lewin. Okay, so you guys at home, let us know. You guys are now the board. Let us know which package deal you're going for, and be realistic, I guess. So let us know in the comments below. Let's move on to our quick fire question now, guys. This one comes from Reynaldo. Which Premier League team has been the biggest disappointment this season? Anyone got any names come to mind straight away?
Yeah,
there's been loads, haven't there?
Yeah.
Go on, Pat.
Exactly. McCubbs is absolutely right. Like, it's half the league, but I do think there are 2 outstanding candidates, and those are Man United and Chelsea. It's as simple as that. Chelsea went into the season with a bunch of people saying they were going to win the league, including you, including Sam Abasaki. People were talking relentlessly. They were like, well, Chelsea are obviously going to win the league. Chelsea are amazing. They're absolutely incredible. And they've added a £100 million striker in Lukaku. They're just going to dominate the league. Lukaku's going to be top scorer. It's going to be easy. I mean, look, the BBC always get all their pundits to predict the top 4 at the beginning of the season. And the majority of them still said City. But nobody said Liverpool, and 7 out of 20 said Chelsea. And I think like 4 people predicted Chelsea as lower than the top 2. And yet, Sam Abasaki still giving it the big one in the group chat, despite the fact that by January, Chelsea had gone from being title favourites to being miles behind the top 2. They're now in a battle for the top 4. It's a battle they'll win, but they're closer to that than they are to the title. And their season has basically come down to, we won the Club World Cup, hooray! Like, I mean, if they go out of the Champions League if they go out the Champions League as well to Real Madrid, an historically awful Real Madrid side. Now, admittedly, Benzema is incredible. Vinicius has been very good, but they're still playing 36-year-old Modric in midfield. And to a degree, as good as Modric is, if a 36-year-old is having a good game against you, it's because you've let him. I just look at them and I think this side was meant to be not, one of the 3 better sides in the Premier League. It was meant to be able to beat Pep's City and Klopp's Liverpool. And now I just think, yeah, they're pretty good. But Arsenal are going to play them next week. Chelsea are still massive favourites in that game. But it's not like us going away to Liverpool, where I would say there is like a 0.1% chance that we'll get a result. We could go away to Chelsea and beat them and no one would be like, my God, it's the greatest shock in football history. That is a pretty bad statement on what's happened with Chelsea. And you've also got to face the fact that Tuchel had this like ridiculous feud with Lukaku, that Lukaku's been whining all year like an absolute tit. The Chelsea fans have been whining about Lukaku in turn. Tuchel's had to have a go at the Chelsea fans this week because of the Brentford loss. Oh my God. Like the whole thing is just embarrassing. Yeah. And I think when you look at the scale of the underachievement, yeah, they're going to make the top 4. Great. But they're not going to win the Champions League unless something miraculous happens. And they're going to get nowhere near the title. So I think, wow, is that what you paid 100 mil for? Also, your beloved owner, his best mate started a war of aggression in Eastern Europe. And then he got poisoned at a conference and went blind. So hasn't been a great season for him either.
I would like the caveat. I think no one expected the Lukaku situation. Like I said to Sam, like this couldn't have gone worse with the Lukaku situation. It really, really couldn't. And Chelsea's like whole thing was, yes, they needed a goal scorer. They needed someone to come in, and Romelu looked like the man, like he really, really did. Maybe the research wasn't as good as it could have been, because the way that Chelsea play football is not the way that Romelu Lukaku plays football. But also,
does that require research to know? Does that require research to know? Couldn't you have just watched 2 games of him at Man United and been like, yeah, I'm not sure this is going to work,
It was so weird because Chelsea were like last season played football that Lukaku is. I still find it mental sometimes when I watch us play football. Is that like when Lukaku is on the pitch, we play with him as a target man. But when he is not on the pitch, we play progressive balls where he can run, where Kai Havertz has to run in behind and all this stuff. And I sit there sometimes and go, why are we not doing this when Lukaku's on the pitch? Like this is what he wants. This is how he plays football. Like play the ball in behind, but it's consistently as a target man. It baffles me sometimes. But then also when he is given the opportunity to play, like he's been really, really poor. I would like to just say though, like. Chelsea really, really dropped off when Ben Chilwell got injured and Reece James got injured. Like, it was really, really poor. And it also has to be said that, like, it maybe wasn't a smart decision to let Emerson go on loan to Lyon. Like, we were literally trying to bring him back in January. We're willing to pay someone to have our own player come back from loan. So there are things which I guess Chelsea didn't necessarily predict, like their most creative outlets being injured this season. But they should have also prepared more for that. If Reece James did get injured, then a 34-year-old Aspilicueta, who's never necessarily been a creative guy, like maybe we should not let Tino Livramento go out or be sold. But that is what it is. I do agree. Like it has been disappointing. We'll have to just see whether we can beat Real Madrid on Tuesday. God, that second goal as well. The third goal, by Mendy, just was absolutely killer.
Amazing.
Mikey, you got any suggestions for disappointing teams?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we have to talk about United. We've spoken about them all day, haven't we? But yeah, I mean, similarly, like some people were even saying United were title challengers, not in the same way that Chelsea were. I think that was always a pretty poor prediction. I think also, like, it is funny, like, when you look back at, like, the start of the season, so many people were saying that Liverpool were going to, like, scrape fourth, and it's like, there is this sense, I think it's like a human thing as well. It's like, well, I've seen this thing happen, so it's going to happen again. And it's like, everyone was kind of, were people, like, assuming that Liverpool were going to have another injury crisis? Because if they did, then that probably would have happened, but they haven't.
Yeah.
And they've generally been pretty fortunate with injuries in almost every season aside from 2021. So yeah, I think United. I think I never had them down as title challengers this year, but I certainly thought they were going to be in the hunt.
Top 4. Yeah.
Maybe halfway into the season, and would be comfortable in the Champions League places given the recruitment last year, and they've had their worst season in about 3 years. So yeah, really, really poor. I think Everton as well, who thought that they were actually going to be going for a relegation, going to be in a relegation battle. I know Rafa Benitez was not a popular appointment, but he was not. No one looked to that and was like, yeah, Everton are going to be like 1 point above the relegation zone in April. Like that wouldn't have been in people's thinking, would it? I think they have had a like really, really bad, considering the squad that's there. Like, there's been a lot of talk about, like, you know, that back line as a championship back line. It wasn't a championship back line last year. Like, there were a number of really good performers in that defence last year. Like, there are Champions League players in the midfield. Like, you've got, like, I know Calvert-Lewin's been injured a lot, but you've got Richarlison up top. You've got, like, you know, Demarai Gray was playing the best football of his career at the start of the season. Like, that squad and the amount of money that's been spent on it is mad. They've just posted a £100+ million loss for the third season running, and they could get relegated. Like,
and they've got no
Everton
relegation clauses.
Sorry,
they've got no relegation clauses in their players' contracts either. Like,
really?
They'll be paying, like, they'll have to sell basically nearly everyone if they go down. It's a frightening prospect. But who knows? We'll have to wait and see what happens. Losing to Burnley 3-2 was not the result they needed. Okay then, lads. Let's end it here, I think. Maybe a quick personal question. My own personal question, lads. Have you ever watched a film, and which film was it, where you came out and were like, wow, this was now my number one? I
think I went and saw Apocalypse Now when I was like a teenager at like they put it on at like the BFI in London, and I went and saw that, and I came out and I was like, that's like, I've never had a cinematic experience like that. That was just like unreal. And then I actually watched it only for the second time a few months ago, and I'd forgotten almost the entire film. Like, there was like so much stuff that happened in it which I didn't even realise happened, and I think that might have been partly because it was a different cut, but like, there were also other details. There was it's a war film about Vietnam, but I kind of remember the first time seeing it was just like, oh, it's kind of like, it's really the music and everything. It's really kind of psychedelic and whatnot. And then I watched it the second time. I was like, oh god, actually no, there's lots of really brutal, horrible killing in it, and like, it's just that film I think's the one that I came out, I was like, yeah, that was ridiculous.
Good to hear. I mean, the only reason I say it is because I watched Django Unchained last weekend and was just like, wow. It blew my socks off. I think it now may be my favourite film ever. Anyone for you, Pat?
I mean, Django is great, but like, it's not even Tarantino's best film, man. Like, as much as I love Django, it might be the most your it might be the most your taste though. Like, that's fair enough. I mean, there was Out of Sight when I was a kid, the Steven Soderbergh movie, which was the film that made me start reading scripts and like eventually go and work in the film industry for a little bit. You know what? Actually, it's kind of a sensation you have more as a kid than as an adult. It's really fun that you guys are talking about examples from later on in life, because sometimes some of that like wonder goes away. Because the one that stands out in my mind is when I was 11 and the first Lord of the Rings film came out. And I saw it in the cinema and I was like, guys, this is sick. And I was just like, what's going on? You know, because I was like the perfect age for it as well. And to sit through a 3-hour film and at the end of it be like, oh, like, let's do it again. That was really, really cool. As an adult, I haven't come out of something and thought that is now my favorite film, but I remember seeing Parasite and being like, holy, that like blew the doors off. And there's a film called The Great Beauty as well, an Italian film, La Grande Bellezza, and that is incredible. And I saw that probably like 5-6 years ago. And I was just like, wow, this is like one of my favorite films of the last 10 years. So I did have some of that same feeling, but never quite as good as like a little fat 11-year-old boy watching Lord of the Rings and being like, oh, and you know, it just did everything. It was great because it's also a film about you know, short people being sick. So that was something that I needed at that time in my life, I think.
It's funny you say that though, Pat, about like going to the wonderment as a kid, because like I actually did it. It's something that my dad still pulls me up on. Like, whenever I went to the cinema with like to see a film when I was like a kid, I would almost come out every single time and be like, that's the best film I've ever seen. Like, almost every film that I saw, any film that I saw that maybe wasn't like animated, I would come out and be like, yeah, that's the best film I've ever seen, because you're just so like in the story, aren't you? You get completely consumed by it.
I think for me that like the Harry Potter series was that.
Yeah.
Like, because of growing up, that was it for me. I remember thinking like, oh, every single time I came out of it being like, oh my God, like this is incredible. Though I do remember watching, this is going to sound really sad, but I do remember watching Bridge to Terabithia. and I actually cried because there's a scene in it where the main girl like dies, and my mum was like, yeah, and my mum was like, oh, like why are you crying in this? And I was just like, oh, and I was like, oh, it's just so sad. Whereas realistically, I just fancied her, and she wasn't going to be in the movie anymore. So, yeah, and I was like,
Zach, you could just say that like the movie made you feel a feeling. Like it's all right. Life isn't just divided into like, horny and not horny. You're allowed to have other feelings.
I am a big crier in films. There was a film
I think that's
recently.
great. I love it when a film makes me cry because I think as a man as well, you're kind of socialized not to do it. So I think there was
for sure.
There was like a 15-year period of my life where I never cried in like my normal life, and I would only ever cry at like a film or something that would make me feel like how stupid is that? That's like a
100%, 100%. I completely agree. But like there are even moments though in films where like I've got a tear coming down my cheek, and I'm like, nothing's even sad. I don't even know why I'm crying at this point. But yeah, I'm a big crier at films. Let us know which film made you cry, guys, in the comments below.
Great questions.
Just share our emotions.
E.T. As a boy.
E.T. Yes. What when he leaves or when he gets captured?
I don't know, man. I was a child.
Both moments.
But I know it made me cry. Like this is a story in my family. But how it made me cry.
That is really good. Yeah, let us know which film made you cry in the comments below. That is the end of the show, guys. Any shout outs to go watch something, McCubbin?
Go check out Continental Club on Friday. Zach also joined us on EFD. So we spoke about underrated signings this season. Who was the best? We had a good discussion. So go and see that.
Indeed. You get to see a little bit of the new studio as well.
Very true.
In there. Also, check out The Chase. Like, please check out The Chase. If you enjoy it, please like the video. If so, we'll try and do more of that stuff. That has been Sunday Vibes, a long one. Subscribe to the channel, like this video. We'll see you next week. Have a good weekend. Bye.